Modders are overhauling Fallout 4's Commonwealth. In this video, I'm going to show you a fairly wide range of mods, sometimes being a small mod that's going to really impact things on a broad scale, other times being more comprehensive and substantial overhauls of the Commonwealth overall, but all of these coming together with both new and older mods to really improve and advance Fallout 4, specifically with the world space, enemies, and all of the things you see. So one of the first ones that I absolutely love, and I think is going to be really fitting for a lot of you, is actually a relatively simple mod at its core, but has a big impact. Modern Weapon Replacer Combined Arms is going to take the recently released weapon pack for Fallout 4, that being Combined Arms, and more or less make it so the weapons from that pack replace many of the weapons that would typically appear in Fallout 4. So for example, instead of finding a combat shotgun, you'll find things like a Spaz 12. The pipe guns replaced with AKs, and even the 10mm pistol replaced with an M9. This one feels particularly awesome because with quite literally just two mods, the weapon replacer as well as Combined Arms itself, you could basically change the entire Commonwealth. Basically every enemy interaction now will feel unique and more interesting, and I think this is one of those things that if you've played Fallout 4 enough, you're just getting tired of the same old same old. Like, how many times have you had a raider run up to you with a pipe pistol or a 10mm pistol? Now actually seeing them use something different consistently is pretty awesome. And this even does affect some of the static spawns. Some of the unique weapons in the world are replaced, and even just some of the other weapons that do have specific spawn locations. Combined Arms for me is easily one of the best weapon packs ever released, and I think this combo is pretty nice because it still allows you to add other weapon mods atop, but it gives you a nice base for the Commonwealth because things will always be looking unique and distinctive. A great tandem mod that also will have a fairly large impact on the Commonwealth overall is the Modern Warfare Hit Sounds mod. It's fairly simple in that it's going to add in additional sound effects around gunfights, as well as additional hit effects from actually getting hit by bullets from enemies. So bullets whizzing past you will be much more distinctive now. You'll actually hear this noise a lot more audibly, and even further, if one of those bullets actually does hit you, you will actually have a flinch effect on you and some screen effects pop up with you. I like this because I feel like compared to the flinch mechanics overall with Fallout 4, this is definitely one of the lighter ones, but at the same time, to me, it still feels fairly well balanced. Even if you're fairly tanky but still in regular armor, you don't want to get hit by a bunch of bullets, so it's going to incentivize you to get out of the way of gunfire and actually use cover way more often. It's something relatively small at first glance, but across an entire playthrough, this can completely convert the way you play, from face tanking against every enemy once you get a certain defensive rating, to actually having to put a bit more thought into interactions, because if you just get burst from several angles, those flinches will really start to have an effect on you. Okay, but on a more serious note, a problem I've had numerous times when making videos, especially with some older mods, is I'll be all excited to cover those mods, perhaps I even get a couple of other mods that'll mesh well with it, I start reading all about it, actually start covering it and recording some of the background footage for it, only to realize one or several features of the mod doesn't actually work anymore. I literally have hours or tens of hours of footage of mods that I wanted to cover, started covering, but couldn't actually get working. So sometimes finding that just right mod can be particularly difficult for me. That's why it's always helpful when you guys suggest awesome mods to check out to me. You know what else can be pretty difficult? Finding that perfect game among thousands in the App Store. But today I am going to help you along with today's video sponsor, Hero Wars. Hero Wars is an action RPG that features a wide variety of PvP modes to experience. And full disclosure, I play a lot of single player games on the channel, but in my free time, I get pretty sweaty at some PvP games, looking up guides, looking up strategies, and trying to absolutely embarrass other players. Hero Wars offers all of that and more. There are over 50 completely different heroes that have unique skills and interesting synergies that will have you constantly reevaluating your team and trying to improve. If you don't like getting sweaty against other players, it also does have a fully fledged campaign mode with over 130 missions, with new heroes to discover and bosses to take down. Become a hero of the Hero Wars and collect your team of unique characters. Go into the game right now, kill the Archdemon, get a super chest with a secret hero. And the best part, it's all totally free. Scan this QR code or download the game from the link below in the video description, and potentially you'll run into me, and potentially I'll massacre you in a PvP mode. But looking back at Fallout 4, just recently we did get the more comprehensive HD overhaul from Luxor. I've covered it in the past, and I'll have a link to it down below if you want to check it out for yourself. It does affect nearly all of the Commonwealth, but also inspired me to showcase a couple of mods that will not only make your game perform perform better, but also look a lot better across various fronts. One of the first ones I want to highlight is the natural bundle, and I really like this one, as what it's going to do is be very true to form upgrades on several aspects of Fallout 4's Commonwealth. So it's going to focus on three things distinctively: caves, masonry, as well as submarines. And what you'll see it is distinctively a texture upgrade for each of these. Sometimes the visuals are slightly changed, but they're always pretty true to form. Like if you have this mod installed, I think these things definitely look better, but they don't look different. It's not like it's out of Fallout 4 or changing up the overall style. It's just really an upgrade on what's there already. In particular with these submarines, I think it makes submarines just look a lot better overall, and you can see a lot crisper textures broadly. Another pretty cool one from the same mod author is Redder Rocket. This one's a bit more unique in that it's going to make Red Rocket look more like kind of a 60s styled gas station. I think this is cool. It's not really what's there in Fallout 4, but I feel like it fits with the theme of Red Rocket super well anyway. In reality, it only makes a couple of changes around the structure overall, but I think it really captures that 60s America vibe quite well and does make Red Rockets just feel a bit cooler to me. And lastly, we do have the retro radio, another pretty simple one, but this time it's going to take the default Fallout radios and make them look a bit more like US retro styled radios. This one's probably not going to be for everyone, but I thought it was a cool one from the same mod author to also include. But I don't only want to look at retexture mods, because there's a lot of other ways to improve the Commonwealth, and one really cool one is Railroad Redone. This one isn't just a retexture, but rather it's a bit of a rework of the Railroad HQ overall. What it'll do is clean it up a bit. It'll actually remove some of the trash, make it seem like people actually live here, and that lived in style is one of the core components of this mod, as it'll actually make the Railroad HQ a lot more practical. Some of the leaders actually get their own distinctive bedrooms. There are now actual sleeping quarters in the base. It's not like everyone just sleeps on the floor. They need beds in this location. This has always been a pet peeve of mine in Fallout 4. Many of the faction bases just don't actually make sense from a base perspective. This mod will address that for the Railroad HQ, as well as just add a lot more going on. I feel like it definitely makes it a far more interesting location overall. And even though the exterior to this location, how you actually get in, was always pretty cool, I feel like the interior was always one of the weaker choices out of the factions overall. I mean, let's be honest, the Railroad HQ never had a chance against the Pridwin or the Institute, but it probably does beat out Sanctuary Hills, so we need a mod to change up or improve that also. And for that, we do have Anom Sanctuary Hills Overhaul. So I'll say this off the bat because I know it's going to be the case. This mod will not be for everyone, as what this is going to be is a distinctive change up for Sanctuary in Fallout 4. As what it's going to do is remove that futuristic style Sanctuary typically has in the game and rather reconstruct the city with a more modern, true to Commonwealth style. So more or less, it's going to make the city actually look like most of the other cities you could find in Fallout 4. The buildings will look like the other buildings you'll find around the Commonwealth. I like this one for two major reasons. I think on one hand, it just changes up the overall feel of Sanctuary. Just reading the description of this mod, I didn't think it would have as much of an impact, but actually walking around Sanctuary and contemplating building a settlement here, it really feels different. I think it's the wider roads and just the overall bit of a cleaner style it feels like it has. Many of the buildings are still in shambles and can be repaired. There's actually an optional download to repair many of these on Nexus, but it really changes up the overall feel of the town, and I like that. If you played Fallout 4 hundreds of times, you might just want Sanctuary to feel a bit different when you're setting up base there, especially with something like Sim settlements. As well as there's just not many settlements in Fallout 4 that actually do have this little mini city slash town style for you to build upon or just completely knock down and build your own thing over. But I think building into some of these other buildings, actually making some of these houses livable again, could be a pretty cool style with this one. And I feel like this is a better encapsulation of that than the old Sanctuary. With that said, at this point, you may be having some FPS issues. We've made Fallout 4 look a bit different, but also a bit better. So this fairly groundbreaking mod to come out recently that is actually quite simple is Fallout Priority. And in fact, all this mod is actually going to do is make it so Fallout 4 is always set to be high priority in Windows. This meaning that it'll be more heavily prioritized around CPU usage in particular, but with your PC's resources overall. So let's say you have a ton of stuff open and running in the background, but then you're also playing Fallout 4, you're just launching Fallout 4, your PC will prioritize your computer's resources going to Fallout 4 more so. And as long as you're actively playing the game, that actually makes a lot of sense. And in particular, what this seems to mean is if you're playing on a mid-level to lower end system, or somebody who is running into crashes a lot, whether it be from running on a lower end system, or perhaps just having a hyper modded playthrough, this actually does tend to have a pretty big impact. I saw some reports from people saying that they would regularly crash during play, and this mod largely fixed that. Now, if you do have a higher end system, which I'm fortunate enough to have myself, I didn't notice a huge improvement. I feel like there was a couple of extra FPS, but in general, it's really not hurting you much. If you are someone that typically doesn't just leave Fallout 4 open in the background, this mod does have the potential to improve your performance, and I think it's worth a download to see if you get any improvements for yourself, especially if you're one of those people running into problems already. Next up, we do have Raider Overhaul 1, which is a pretty interesting mod. You remember the Raider Overhaul? It's a fairly popular mod, or at least it was a fairly popular mod for Fallout 4. Add in new armors, weapons, and even some new items to find on raiders. Well, basically, this is that mod, except updated, so it has some fixes, some improvements, like the balance and level list integrations overall seem to be better, but also just one singular download. And this is all done with permission. It's not like this is a stolen mod or anything like that. And although currently there isn't a ton of new content, there has been a steady stream of updates, improvements, and actually integration with other mods that is pretty cool. And really the takeaway with this one is, if you are already enjoying the older Raider Overhaul and you are looking for something new and fresh to spice up your game, or even just something to spice up the raiders in general, this is a great download. It again adds in a wide variety of new apparel and armors, some of these being actually exclusive to specific raider bosses, as well as some new weapons for them to use and for you to find, and just makes the faction as a whole a lot more interesting with some more depth, as well as a variety of new chems to discover. And I feel like this is really the beauty of modding. A mod that otherwise would be pretty outdated and probably abandoned and rarely used is now actually getting attention once again years after the fact, and in turn getting a lot more life out of it and a ton more use down the road. So one that I actually think is a really cool new weapon mod that adds in a great item to Fallout 4 is the Makeshift Shotgun. So Fallout 4 was supposed to get a pipe shotgun. It looked very similar to this. This weapon is modeled after the concept art, and on that front it is cool. It's very lore friendly, and just it looks like it fits in Fallout 4, like something a raider or somebody would have thrown together to survive. I know that there's a ton of mods that add in something like that. This one's pretty cool in that it adds in this, but with some unique variants, as you can actually customize this to be a regular shotgun, to be a laser rifle, so you load in a microfusion cell into this and then actually fire lasers from it. You can make it so it's just a functional grenade launcher with a single shot grenade, actually a combo between the laser and the grenade, so it's a explosion that has laser effects coming from it. And lastly, almost a mini nuke, like a smaller scale mini nuke that is fired from the shotgun. Now I feel like this is a really cool integration because it is integrated into the level list overall. You'll find other enemies with this one, but also it's kind of this nice earlier game weapon that you could just find as a base shotgun, and then actually, if you perk out in the right direction, upgrade it into one of these other alternatives. Fallout 4 doesn't really have much in the way of cool grenade launchers, and especially cool grenade launchers that actually look like they fit into the world, and I feel like this one does a ton, all while being a relatively simple download, but kind of adds in a bunch of different categories that are fun to use. Another one that's going to really change up the look of the Commonwealth is the Pine Forest Redone. This is a pretty intense one, as what it's going to do is make it so the Commonwealth is taken over by a pine forest. And this really does have an impact. All throughout the Commonwealth now, you will find these very tall and sometimes menacing trees, as well as this fog that does come along with them. Although don't fret, because the fog is optional and you could turn it off if you don't want it. I really like mods like this because I feel like it checks so many boxes with subsequent playthroughs. Like on one hand, basically all of Fallout 4 just now looks vastly different. With basically every playthrough, I try and change up some of the environmental mods I am using, and this is definitely a pretty intense one. It also does have the effect of actually impacting combat and exploration. At times, it really does feel like you are kind of leaving this big body of trees and walking out into something new and unique. You don't really know what you're going to find over there, but also a ton of cover and a lot more interesting terrain when you're encountering enemies or actually trying to find enemies from afar. It is definitely one of the more extreme environmental mods overall, and it does have a bit of an impact on FPS. For me, it was relatively minimal though. I was still always well above 50 FPS, but actually a great tandem mod to spice this up even further and make the Commonwealth overall more interesting is more wildlife. This is a really awesome mod. It's going to make it so those little miscellaneous creatures you find all throughout are going to be more common. The way this mod works is it's going to add in a ton of static spawns. Then when you enter into an area, there's a chance that spawn will occur. Sometimes sometimes this will actually be animal interaction, so an animal attacking a human, or just a couple of animals hanging out for you to take down or even ignore, but most people probably won't do that. And this coupled with the Pine Forest Redone mod feels really cool. A lot of times due to the forest, you won't actually be able to see the animals until you're relatively close to them, and since there are so many more, you'll actually find them fairly often. It seems like something relatively minor at first, but it kind of makes hunting a viable aspect of the game and a pretty cool one. And if you are going hunting, you may want the perfect weapon, and next up we do have the Remington Model 700. This is actually a really cool new highly customizable sniper rifle for Fallout 4. You can convert this into a bunch of different things and have a bunch of different styles. You could have the hunting variant, a military variant, as well as a couple of other choices for you to choose from. And of course, it has a full range of customization options. Beyond that, some color customization, different scopes, as well as different barrel extensions. This integrates with some awesome mods, see-through scopes, and tactical reload. So depending if you ran out of bullets, you'll have a bit of a different reload animation, but also you don't have the obnoxious vanilla scopes and the much superior see-through scopes alternative. But it also has a unique feature, which is actually somewhat rare for weapon mods these days, in that it doesn't have many receiver options, and instead the damage and stats in general will be heavily determined by the caliber type you choose. So which caliber you choose with this will impact the damage overall, but also things like the recoil, range, etc. It's really cool. And even just on one front, the fact that it's unique and different than so many other mods out there does kind of make me like it a bit more. I feel like with weapon mods nowadays, it is so much of the same, and actually seeing somebody do something even just a bit different is great. Not to mention the animation, sounds, and just overall look of this gun fits right into Fallout 4, and it feels pretty special to use. But then for the final mod in this video, we have a bit of an interesting one that definitely needs some more discussion. But first, what we're looking at is post-apocalyptic Commonwealth. This is previously known as Project Apocalyptic Commonwealth if you've heard it or used it in the past. This is probably one of the coolest environmental impacting mods I've seen thus far, as what it'll more or less do is create several little scenes or prop up certain areas in the Commonwealth that actually make it look like it's an apocalypse. Specifically, it kind of feels like an apocalypse movie. So if you look around Concord, you'll find a ton of military installments. You'll actually even find some pretty dark environmental storytelling, but in general, with the areas affected by this one, there's just way more going on, way more props placed down, things to find, things to loot, and a lot of that environmental storytelling is used. I think the aesthetic this gives to the Commonwealth, or at least the parts of the Commonwealth it affects, is just really cool. Unfortunately, as you could probably get by the way I'm talking about this, it isn't a comprehensive mod, not even close. It affects a few select areas, but it is not quite on a large scale yet. But it's one that I'm definitely here to support, and I really would love to see more stuff like this in the future, because in reality, even if it's not necessarily the most realistic, it still is really cool, and I feel like it does kind of ground the game a little bit. You actually realize, hey, I'm in the apocalypse now. You're getting a more proper glimpse at the society before, which I don't know how good of a job Fallout 4 does by default in some of these environments. But one of the reasons this is more notable is it's actually one of the first mods I've covered on this channel thus far that is a part of mod authors removing their mods from Nexus. So this mod was previously available on Nexus and is no longer available there. If you want to know why this is going on, I made a full video on it. I'll have it linked in the eye, but more or less, Nexus is adding mod packs. Mod packs are not able to be opt out of. So if you have a mod on the platform, you are automatically participating in mod packs. You have no say in the matter, and even further, you are unable to delete your mods. You can technically hide the entire public page, but your mods will still be archived, so if a mod pack uses them, it'll still have access to it, and you have no control over that. Or at least technically right now you can request a complete deletion, but once all of this does go live, you will not have control over it. Again, I flesh it out way more in my video looking at the pros and cons, etc. But naturally, this loss of freedom has led to a lot of mod authors pulling their mods, and this is one of the notable ones. Even further, another pretty big one hosted on the same server, in fact, is better locational damage, better explosives, the game configuration menu, not to be confused with the mod configuration menu, but over the past week or so, we've definitely been seeing more modders pull their mods. There's a couple of people that did it initially, but I feel like in the past week, it's definitely been ramping up a bit, with one of the most notable announcements being made by the Fallout 3 remake mod, or really the team behind that mod, where they revealed their mods on Nexus won't be removed, but they will no longer be supported, and they will not be releasing any further mods on Nexus. So basically all of these mods, among a bunch of other ones, won't receive updates anymore. They'll remain, so you could download this version, but no future ones. And again, any future things they publish, like, you know, that Point Lookout remake that they are largely complete with and is now in a bug fixing voice acting stage, at least at this current time, will not release on Nexus, likely unless things change in the future. In the future, I'll probably make a full video on this, especially if more mods start getting pulled. It's not really clear where things will be next. Lots of people are just on Discord now, which for me is kind of a problem being so close to the Discord server limit, but several servers have almost become kind of safe havens in a way, like a ton of modders are all posting their mods in one specific Discord. But if you're not super into the modding scene or don't follow things too closely, you may have not even realized this is going on, so I wanted to highlight it here considering I'm actually covering a mod that's handling this. With that said, hopefully you guys found this one informative. Again, there still are a ton of great mods on Nexus, and even ones that aren't available on Nexus are still typically just one website or one Discord join away. With that said, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you found this informative, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.